Okay, welcome. My name is Thorin Tritter, and I'm the Museum and Programming Director at the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center located in Glen Cove, New York. I'm delighted to welcome you to tonight's program, the screening and discussion of a film called Selma, Bridge to the Ballot. It's a film about 40 minutes in length, and I really think you're going to enjoy it. But before I go on, let me make a couple of thank yous. First, to the Education Committee of the NAACP's Freeport Roosevelt Branch, who are co-sponsoring our program this evening. I also want to thank Christine Waters, the Education Committee chairperson at the Freeport Roosevelt Branch, who brought this film to our attention and has built really a wonderful relationship with us that I'm sure will continue to result in engaging in innovative film programs into the future. If you're wondering, and I hope you're not, but if you are wondering why the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center would be holding a program about the civil rights movement in Selma, Alabama in the 1960s, the answer is actually pretty simple. Although we're a Holocaust memorial, as our name makes clear, we're also a tolerance center. Our mission is not only to teach about the history of the Holocaust, but to teach about the dangers of racism, bullying, and all manifestations of intolerance. Our mission is also to promote resistance to prejudice and to advocate respect for every human being. So showing a film about the voting rights campaign in Selma and the struggle to combat racism and discrimination is something that fits right into our wheelhouse. I will also say that HMTC is eager to celebrate events, films, and speakers who empower people to stand up against oppression and to raise their voices when they witness persecution. One of the major lessons we teach about when studying the Holocaust is the need for people to avoid being bystanders and the importance of being what we call upstanders, somebody who speaks out when they see injustice. And as you'll see in the coming film, the young people of Selma, Alabama in the 1960s are models of being upstanders. They were willing to risk everything to secure the right to vote, recognizing the power of that voting, of the vote. Today, when some of us feel the need for reform is so great that it's almost overwhelming, and when others think that the vote makes no difference, I hope that this film will serve as a reminder of how much power we, the people, do wield with that single action of completing our ballot. And I also hope it will remind us of how much people have been willing to risk in the past in order to earn the right to vote that we may take for granted. Before I introduce the speaker who is behind our program tonight, I wanted to share some information about some upcoming programs. I hope you won't mind. I'm just going to put in a little advertisement and share, oops, I'm trying to get the slide up there. There we go. Share some of our upcoming programs. This coming Sunday, November 1st at 1 o'clock, we are holding a virtual program to mark the launching of our newest exhibition, an exhibition entitled The Holocaust Through the Eyes of a Survivor's Daughter, Sculptures by Tamima. This is the first exhibition of Tamima's Holocaust work in the country, and I hope you will join us for a virtual discussion with her about her family history, her process, and her art, and then come and see the exhibition in person, although I will just ask that you make a reservation in advance to visit our exhibition. Another program coming up next Wednesday, November 4th at noon, I'll be offering my next Curator's Corners program. It's one of a regular series of virtual programs that I do where I explore an individual object or image in our museum's collection. And I will be talking about a photograph from the Canada warehouse in Auschwitz next Wednesday at noon. And one more program to mention, on Tuesday, November 17th at 6:30 p.m., we'll be holding the culminating program of our Yiddish Culture series. We're going to have actor and educator Bob Spiato performing a one-man show about the life of Shalom Aleichem, the Yiddish author and playwright best known for crafting the stories that became the basis for Fiddler on the Roof. So I hope that you will go to our website at www.hmtcli.org, click on the events tab, and see more information about these programs and our full schedule of other events. Okay, with that public service announcement out of the way, I'm going to stop sharing those slides, and I'm going to introduce the person who is really behind our programs and our film programming all the time. And let me see if I can bring her onto the screen. Just give me a moment and we'll get her back here. There we go. So to introduce our program and our speaker tonight, I'm going to call on Mireille Taub, the woman behind all of the Holocaust Center's film programs. Mireille is a Holocaust survivor herself who has been volunteering as an educator and docent here at HMTC for many years. In addition to her work with school groups and serving on our Education Advisory Committee, in 2013, she launched the David Taub Real Upstanders film series in honor of her late husband, who was also a Holocaust survivor. To date, Mireille has helped bring more than 24 films and programs to our calendar, all of which have been connected to the idea that I mentioned a moment ago, the need to fight against the urge to be a bystander and instead to encourage all of us to be upstanders. So Mireille, thank you for all you do for the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center, and I pass the baton to you for introducing our program tonight.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight to watch and participate in the new Watch from Home film format for our David Taub Real Upstanders film series. The David Taub Real Upstanders film series is named after my husband, David Taub, who was a hidden child in a small village in the heart of France during the Second World War. The rights of citizenship came up quite early in my husband's life. He was born in France, the child of immigrants who had not, even after many years of living in France, been able to achieve citizenship. Indeed, they would not become French citizens until after the war. However, David's parents did petition the French government to grant David, infant, all the rights and privileges of a French citizen, which of course would include the right to vote. That citizenship proved crucial because while David was persecuted because of his religion between 1940 and 1945, he was somewhat protected because he was a French national. Both Vichy France and the occupied zone in the north focused much more attention on foreign Jews, like David's parents, who were not French citizens. And because they were not French citizens, they became the primary targets of persecution. David survived the war and was then old enough to vote, and casting his first vote in elections that were held in post-war France. After moving to the United States and becoming an American citizen, he voted religiously in every election. Even when he was traveling extensively for work, he made sure to vote. David, like many of us, considered voting a necessity as well as a sacred duty for our democracy. However, we know that not all American citizens had equal access to this basic right. Selma, the Bridge to the Ballot, offers a vivid narrative of empowerment, capturing the struggle that African Americans faced in Alabama and in other parts of our country during the 1960s to secure the right to vote, which supposedly had been guaranteed with the passage of the 16th Amendment 100 years earlier in the wake of the Civil War. I do want to thank Christine Waters. And before I introduce our commentator for this evening, Claudia Swansey, Christine Waters, who's been instrumental in working with us on various films that we've been showing, is the regional director for the NAACP and has helped make this documentary available to us. She heads the local GOTV, Get Out the Vote, effort on behalf of the NAACP's New York State Chair, and is also a member of the Education Committee for the Freeport Roosevelt Branch of the NAACP. I'm grateful for all her help in making this screening possible. I would believe we have a film clip from Christine. Thorin, can you? There we go.
Thank you, Thorin. Thank you, Marie. Tonight, the NAACP Freeport Roosevelt Branch Education Department is proud to co-sponsor the screening of Selma March to the Ballot, which marks a pivotal time that changed the trajectory of American history in the battle for our right to vote. We We hope that you will see the parallels between the fight for voting rights in Selma in the 1960s and the current battles that we are fighting in 2020, when once again, voter suppression threatens to take away our right to be heard. And our vote is our voice. The NAACP, in collaboration with HMTC, are pleased to be part of the David Taub Real Upstanders film series to recognize David's vision of the power of film to persuade and to unite our hearts towards the common goals of justice and equity for all. We are all looking forward to the discussion after the program with Ms. Swansey about her role in the fight for equality.
At this point, I would like to introduce our speaker and commentator for this evening, Ms. Claudia Swanson, former head of the Freeport Roosevelt Branch of the NAACP and now the coordinator for the NAACP New York Civic Engagement. Claudia is originally from the heart of segregated Alabama. She's a graduate of Loyola University. Her diverse and successful career has taken her from bank officer to philanthropic fund manager on national and international levels. In addition, she has shown a commitment to political engagement and equitable representation, working in electoral campaigns in the United States and creating an organization that sent election monitors to South Africa during Nelson Mandela's presidential campaign after the end of the apartheid era. She has received numerous awards from the NAACP, the Woodward's Children's Center, Adelphi University, and Lions International. I am very proud to welcome Claudia as our facilitator for this stirring film. Hello, Claudia.
Yes, good evening, and thank you so very, very much. Welcome everyone to this, one of the most powerful events that has happened in American history. Welcome one and all. I would first just like to give my thanks and gratitude for everyone who was, that I was allowed to participate in this particular endeavor, especially to my friend, Christina Waters. And also the fact I would like to give a shout out to Hazel, Dr. Hazel N. Dukes, who is the president of the NAACP New York State Conference. This has been this particular endeavor for me is very, very meaningful. I am originally from Alabama, in fact, Camden, Alabama, which is in Wilcox County. And that particular area was considered during that particular time to be one of the most violent and segregated areas in the state of Alabama. So if I could just take you on a personal trip with me through some of my memory lanes. This is very emotional for me. So if I sound a little bit teary, it might really happen. I was attending Camden Academy in my youth. And of course, we had only Black teachers. Our motto at Camden Academy was, "May you ever stand, a light to guide us by thy mighty hand. Be thou our ruler, guardian, guide, and stay. Thy word our law, thy paths our chosen way. When on the toilsome battlefield of life, we'll turn to thee for rest, for peace, for life, knowing that thou wilt grasp us by the hand to lead us on to victory in the land." My principal, Mr. James Hobbs, and teachers participated in so many marches and demonstrations, and they were the people who taught us what it meant, what civil rights were. And although my school, if I can just tell you, if you can just envision in your mind, my school, Camden Academy, sat on a picturesque hill. This land was purchased by slave owners who wanted slave descendants to have a place to go to school. Now, my particular school, Camden Academy, was the only one that was within the city limits of Camden, which is the county seat of Wilcox County. The other schools was in the rural districts. But just think about this picturesque school. And if you want to look it up, you can look up Camden Academy and you will see this school. But what is the history of the school is that it's set on a hill, picturesque school, if I will repeat. And this was called Hangman's Hill. The reason it was called Hangman's Hill is because so many people were hung on those particular grounds. They said their last goodbye and they were taken into eternity by a noose on the limb of a tree. So that is my schooling, Camden Academy. And as we look at this particular time, although my school is and was a religious school, this was something that was a graveyard that my school was set upon. But remember, even during those particular times, my teachers, they would tell us so many things about our ancestry line, how we survived being chained to other human beings on infested ships across through the Middle Passage. We lost our language, our customs, and traditions. We had to pick up the English language as best we could because we were not allowed to read and write. We were not allowed to be educated. But in the meantime, we were working free of charge from sun up to sundown as we watched our babies being snatched from our arms, and our women were raped ruthless by slave owners. We had to take their names, but with no last names, no birth certificates, no heritage of any kind. Our heritage and culture was stolen from us. We had to brave the Underground Railroad, survive the Civil War, to enter into sharecropping. Then determined as we became, we were still determined to read and write out of sheer will and determination. We faced the burning crosses of the KKK, terror by day, terror by night, and had to avert their eyes in the daytime as we could see hanging bodies. This was part of the experience of growing up in the segregated South. Now, and even afterwards, our men would go into and serve in the armies. They were supposed to be soldiers, but when they came back, what were they? They were boys. Then, as we fought, as the stories would go, how we was hosed down in Birmingham, how we was jailed, and we were so assassinated in Memphis, segregated in the South, ghettos in the North. We are ignored in the history books, stereotyped in Hollywood. But in the meantime, as we go into the story, as of John Lewis and his determination, a 25-year-old man, he said that, the Lord was saying to me, who shall I send and who will go for us? Then John Lewis is quoted as saying, here I am, Lord, send me. And that comes from the book of Isaiah. Okay, but John Lewis, as the story will go, as we will see forthcoming, beaten, tear gas, bullwhipped on this bridge. His skull was cracked, left to die. They had to end the march, and that was the first march to Selma. And the John Lewis, his story is so well told. What happened on Bloody Sunday on the Edmund Pettus Bridge? Okay, and as we go as for going into this story, which I don't want to go to because we have to move forward into the particular story. Just this year, John Lewis took his final walk across that bridge. And one of the most celebratory things that happened in that time was that he was walking across with President Barack Obama. And President Barack Obama has said time and time again, without John Lewis, there would not be a President Obama. And I too, as we watch this film, remember, I am a 16-year-old girl, youth on my school campus. I was tear gassed. I was not beaten. I was not prodded with an electric cattle prod, but I was beaten. And I still can remember the sweetness of a grass when your face go down. So when I relate now, particularly to what's happened with the Black Lives Matters and the youth, it's so inspirational for me to see that I can just go back down memory lane and feel what they might be feeling or what should be feeling as this time. So one of what I want to really focus on in this particular event while you're watching the films, just think about how far we have come and what's next. Hindsight and foresight. We're looking back to move forward. But anyway, this is a new narrative that we have to, must be faced at this particular time, because when we have these mantras that's inciting, go back to where we were. No, we don't need to go back to where we were. We need to go forward to make America become what it must become. So I would just like to hand it back over and we will begin the film. And thank you so much. And prepare your questions, comments, and whatever after the film. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Claudia. Wow, powerful, powerful personal memories there. And we're going to talk more about that for sure after the film.
Yes.
Okay, I think I'm going to hand the screen over to my colleague and we'll start the movie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sunday, September 15th, 1963. A bomb explodes in a church in Birmingham, Alabama. 4 little girls are killed.
We couldn't believe they would kill children getting ready for Sunday school. I guess it shouldn't have been a shock.
The bomb was planted by the Ku Klux Klan. Earlier that year, young protesters marching from the church had attracted the attention of the nation by braving fire hoses, police dogs, and jail to break the stranglehold of segregation in the city. Now, 4 are dead.
The Ku Klux Klan could do anything they want to you. And to know that could happen to you, I was kind of scared. And I think I was kind of angry too.
Activists who helped organize the young protesters are devastated. To honor the 4 girls and transform Alabama, they urged Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to start a voting rights campaign in the state. 90 miles away in Selma, high school students are already taking a stand.
My name is Charles Ballot. I am 17 years old. I'm a student leader for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. On September 16, 1963, we had demonstrations here in Selma.
Student activists target a local drugstore. Inside, a whites-only lunch counter.
And there were 4 students that gone to Carter's drugstore and asked for service, and the owner asked them to leave. One young lady was struck with a electric caliper by the county sheriff. I was struck on the head by the owner. Had 7 stitches applied to my head.
Nine months earlier, Bernard and Kalia Lafayette, young activists with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC for short, had arrived in Selma to start a grassroots voter registration project. It wouldn't be easy.
2 groups of SNCC workers just returned from scouting the city. They reported the white folks are too mean and the black folks are too afraid.
The Lafayettes are embraced by members of the Dallas County Voters League, a local organization pushing for voting rights. Teacher Margaret Moore opens her home to Bernard and Kalia. Educator Amelia Boynton provides Bernard office space. Most in the black community are not as welcoming.
They didn't support him at all. He was like an outsider.
Lafayette turns to Selma's youth.
They were enthusiastic, ready to go. And what I was basically doing was developing student leaders. They took the leadership. I was just giving them advice and giving them support.
If this was going to take place, the youth in Selma had to do it. Adults worried about their jobs and intimidation. And we as kids, we had no jobs to worry about.
Charles Bonner and a few classmates are the first to sign up.
One of my friends asked, "What do we need to do?" Bernard said, "We just need you to go to Hudson High and tell your classmates we'd like to meet with them at the Tabernacle Baptist Church basement."
And he began to ask us questions like, well, why can't your parents vote? Why can't you drink out of the white fountain? And I was about 14, and that was my first contact with anybody who was espousing civil rights.
I wanted change. My father would go into a store, this big, handsome, hard-working, strong black man, and I hear him be called a boy and a nigger. I was hearing this from the time I was 6, 7 years old, you know. This hurt me a lot.
Bernard explained that voter registration was going to be the key to gaining power to make the changes. The voting age was 21, so we couldn't register to vote, obviously.
Our part in voter registration was to go door to door canvassing and trying to get people to go down to register.
100 years after the Civil War, most black people in the South are blocked from voting by a powerful combination of unfair laws and rules enforced by violence and intimidation.
There were all kinds of things to keep people from voting. If they went down to the courthouse and they had a job somewhere, the man just reported to the boss and they got fired.
I asked my mother, had she ever voted? And she told me, don't you never say that out in the street. You don't say nothing like that, because you'll get in trouble.
In the early 60s, 15,000 black adults live in Selma, the largest city in Dallas County. Only 130 are registered to vote. None are registered in nearby Wilcox and Lowndes counties.
I thought our adults were really cowards. I didn't understand until the brutality started to take place that they had a fear of losing not only their jobs, but their lives.
Jim Clark is the sheriff of Dallas County.
I'm a segregationist, and I say this, if my ancestors had not been segregationists, I might be a mulatto, and I'm proud to be a white man.
Clark commands not only his Dallas County officers, but also a posse of white citizens he's deputized.
He represented that whole group of people that felt that they needed to keep black people in their place.
The same day as the Carter's drugstore protest, students staged sit-ins at other segregated establishments. Many cut school to participate in marches and protests. Teachers often look the other way.
Mr. Anderson was the music teacher I loved so much. When we got to his classroom, he just walked to his window and turned his back, and he stated to his class, if anyone is left in this classroom when I turn around, I want you to know you're gonna flunk.
Students helped spread word of a mass registration event at the county courthouse.
My name is Avery Williams. I'm a student representative of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee here in Selma, Alabama. On the date of October the 7th, 1963, we had Freedom Day, and the state troopers told us to clear the area immediately. Chico fell to the ground, and I fell over it. So they started hitting us with the billy sticks.
In the span of 3 weeks, 250 young people are arrested.
I don't know what I was arrested for. I was marching. I was protesting. Well, the first night I spent in jail, well, that was to put the fear in us. You can imagine how jail was.
Weekly mass meetings help energize the students.
Everybody would be there. The church would always be packed.
It hit us that we had a voice, you know? We had a voice.
And the music was the thing that really got the people revved up. At every mass meeting, they said, we need a choir.
People were not looking for the quality of a voice, you know? We were singing ourselves out of fear.
But intimidation and arrests eventually take their toll on the protesters. The signing of a new federal law on July 2nd, 1964, that prohibits segregation in public places, however, gives them hope.
Everything that's segregated, we're going to integrate. We're going to go to lunch counters. We're going to go to Carter's again. We're going to go to the libraries. We're going to go to where only white kids could go in. We're going to go and drink out of the white fountains.
When Johnson signed the law, we went to the Wilbur Theater. We paid our money and went in.
It was extremely frightening because there we are in a sea of white people in the dark. A place that we've never been allowed to go before.
We got in and started looking at the movie. Then all of a sudden the lights came on and some white men came in and said, "Where are the niggers?"
An angry mob runs the black students out of the theater. While students test the new law, adults converge on the courthouse. In 5 days, 90 try to register. Only 6 succeed. More than 70 protesters, students and adults, are arrested.
We didn't stay in jail that long. We be out the next day, ready to march again.
To stop the protests, a local judge issues an order that prohibits 3 or more people associated with civil rights groups from even meeting. Public protests grind to a halt. But members of the Dallas County Voters League, led by Frederick Reese, a science teacher at Hudson High, meet secretly to devise a plan.
We felt the movement in Dallas County was going to stall. We decided that we're going to invite Dr. King to come to Selma.
The church is packed. He came from the back of the church. Everybody stood up and started singing.
Today marks the beginning of a determined, organized, mobilized campaign.
2 weeks earlier, King had urged President Lyndon Johnson to send a voting rights bill to Congress. Johnson, though supportive, says the time is not right. But King is determined to push the president to act.
Once more, we will dramatize this whole situation and seek to arouse the conscience of the federal government by marching by the thousands on places of registration all over this state. If it is necessary, we are willing and must be willing to go to jail by the thousands in Alabama to get the right to vote.
Dr. King spoke and said it was time to move, me and some of my classmates and some of my young friends were saying, you know, all right, we were ready.
Students spread the word of a new mass registration event. 400 answer the call. Sheriff Clark orders protesters to an alley. No one is allowed inside the courthouse. Undeterred, protesters return the next day. This time, they refuse Sheriff Clark's order to move to the alley. 67 are arrested, including movement leader Amelia Boynton.
It is a tragedy when a man becomes so depraved and so sick that he will grab a woman and push and shove as if he were dealing with some wayward dog.
Soon after Mrs. Boynton is arrested, Frederick Reese calls his colleagues together.
I asked them, how can you teach citizenship? Telling boys and girls to be good citizens and you're not registered. And you're not making any attempt to register.
We were their teachers, and our students were out there sacrificing. So we thought that we should be out there too.
105 teachers gathered and marched to the courthouse.
We got ourselves prepared to go to jail. We got our toothbrushes, toothpaste, stuff like that, because we just knew they were gonna arrest us.
You can't make a plaything out of this courthouse. Now, this courthouse is a serious place of business. You seem to think you're taking it to just to be Disneyland or something on a parade. And you came down to make a mockery out of this courthouse, who is not going to happen.
After he pushed us down, he said the next time he was going to arrest all of us. At that time, the superintendent called him inside. Apparently, he told Clark, if you arrest those teachers, what are you going to do with all their students?
The teachers regroup.
You have 10 seconds to get off the step. Time's up. Now move.
Though we didn't get into the courthouse, we made our point. Sheriff Clark once again made a blunder, and it will be seen around the world on the evening news.
I was across the street while they were in line, and we as students were watching them, and proud, very proud. They made a stand that day.
The teachers inspire others in Selma.
The beautician started marching. Undertaker started marching. But it came at a price. The police became more brutal, and people were constantly being arrested. But the adults and students had become a movement in Selma.
Protests happen almost daily. 450 students and 264 adults are arrested for parading without a permit. One of them is Dr. King. Selma's mayor points a finger at the protesters.
Our city and our county has been subjected to the greatest pressures I think any community in the country has had to withstand. We've had in our area here outside agitation groups of all levels. We've had Martin Luther King. They have continually harassed and agitated us for approximately 3 or 4 weeks.
By February 5th, more than 2,000 people, including many students, have been jailed.
You know, at Brown Chapel Church, they have a bus over there waiting. We knew that we were going to be automatically arrested, but we knew that the key was to keep filling up the jail.
The New York Times publishes a letter Dr. King writes from his jail cell. This is Selma, Alabama, he says. There are more Negroes in jail with me than there are on the voting rolls.
We're fighting for our freedom. We shall not be moved. Fighting for our freedom. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved.
A crowd of 160, most of them students, assembles at the courthouse. Instead of busing them to jail, Sheriff Clark and his posse forced the students to march out of town.
They had us in lines running. They were making us go. The only thing that was missing from us that day were the slave chains.
I, along with the others, were throwing up. We couldn't breathe.
2 days later, it is Sheriff Clark who is hospitalized with exhaustion. The niggers are giving me a heart attack, he says.
So we went to the courthouse, got on our knees, and prayed to God that he heals Jim Clark. And he got well quick and came back. Same old Jim Clark. Big belly, the gun, and the billy club.
I can't enforce the law of the right, my friend. This is a national problem. You can't keep anyone in the United States from voting without hurting the rights of all other citizens. Democracy's built on this. This is why every man has the right to vote, regardless. And this is our reason for being here. We're not You're blinding me with that light. We're not holding. Move back. Come on, you can arrest me. Arrest me. Don't keep that man. Don't keep that man. We're willing to be beaten for democracy.
By the middle of February, nearly 3,400 demonstrators, students and adults, have been arrested in Selma since the start of the year.
There was never a time when we were without fear. There was never a time when we didn't think that we may get seriously hurt. We may get killed.
In nearby Marion, Alabama, about 450 people meet at Zion's Chapel Methodist Church to protest the arrest of James Orange, a student organizer. One of them is Jimmy Lee Jackson, a 26-year-old church deacon who has tried to register to vote 5 times.
He was very peaceful and quiet. He would bring his grandfather to church every Sunday.
Local police and state troopers are out in force. As protesters leave the church, they're attacked.
State troopers shouting and jabbing and swinging their nightsticks. The Negroes began screaming and falling back around the entrance to the church. The New York Times.
Jackson and members of his family flee into Mac's Cafe, followed by troopers. Jackson is shot twice in the stomach while defending his mother. He's transported to a local hospital. Walter Dobine is there when Jackson arrives.
He was crying out in pain and crying out for help. And the nurses at the nurses station, there was a couple of them that were real vocal. They were saying, "I will not touch that nigga. He will lay up there and die."
After several hours, Jackson is taken to Good Samaritan Hospital, 30 miles away in Selma. 8 days later, he passes.
When we heard it happened, the question was now, what position are we going to take? Because here's a person who represented our cause. Now he's been shot and killed.
I don't know what tomorrow may bring. I don't know.
Aides pressed Dr. King to call for a symbolic march from Selma to Montgomery.
James Bevel asked me, "Well, Charles, what do you think about a march to Montgomery?" Here I am, just turned 17, and he's asking me what I think. and I told him I thought it was a good idea.
Alabama Governor George Wallace thinks otherwise. 2 years earlier, Wallace had tried to block the integration of the University of Alabama. Now, he's determined to stop the march.
The government must proceed in an orderly manner, and lawful and law-abiding citizens must transact their business with the government in such a manner. There will be no march between Selma, Alabama, and Montgomery.
But in defiance of the governor, protesters meet at Brown Chapel. With Dr. King in Atlanta, the march is led by Hosea Williams and 25-year-old John Lewis.
We, the Negro citizens of Dallas County and other Alabama Blight Belt counties, are marching today from Selma to Montgomery. We are marching to our state capital to dramatize to our nation and to the world our determination to win first-class citizenship.
The marchers, students among them, head toward the bridge leading to Montgomery.
I remember marching in silence for the first 2 to 3 blocks because something didn't feel right.
I was 6th in line behind John Lewis.
I was in the 19th row from the front.
8-year-old Cheyenne Webb is in the middle of the line with the teacher.
I was with Mrs. Margaret Moore. The closer we got to the Edmund Pettus Bridge, my heart began to beat fast because I was becoming scared. I started holding her hand tighter.
We crested the bridge and we knew something was gonna go down because all we could see was that Alabama blue. Some highway patrol with them helmets on. And some of them had gas masks on. He had men on horses, they had billy clubs and bull whips, so you know they was gonna be vicious. I thought, damn, these folks finna kill us.
This march will not continue. Is that clear to you? Troopers, advance.
People start falling like dominoes and then running.
They came in from both sides and beating people. It was horrible.
I heard John's head crack. I remember the sound of that when one of the state troopers hit him across the head.
Tear gases start popping like bombs. It burns your skin and it makes your eyes water. And it makes you almost implode inside.
You can't breathe. It's really bad. You think you're gonna die.
Miss Boynton was knocked down and knocked unconscious and on the ground.
I remember being called nigger twice. I remember being hit twice. I remember biting this hand that was on me. That's when I was able to start running.
I didn't know where to go. Then I saw a horse. The last thing I remember is the sound of me hitting the pavement.
Protesters rush back to Brown Chapel. Clark's posse in pursuit.
There were people all over the place. And then there's the police on horseback, riding with billy clubs. And you could hear the licks, like they were playing polo.
We went into the church. John Lewis's head was split open. He tried to talk and he collapsed. They had to rush him out to the hospital.
Close to 100 marchers are wounded. That evening, news of what is quickly dubbed Bloody Sunday is broadcast into homes across the country.
I was the minister of Berkeley Unitarian Fellowship. I, along with millions of other Americans, saw the televised news of what happened on Bloody Sunday. I was horrified by the brutality of the police, of the state troopers, and the sheriff deputies.
From Atlanta, Dr. King announces plans for another march in 2 days.
I happened to be driving in my car, and I heard on the noontime news that Martin Luther King had called for clergy to come to Selma.
Thousands answered Dr. King's call.
We had so many folks coming to Selma. I mean, like every bus in America was in Selma.
You know, the funny thing is, I didn't know any good white people. And when the white people started coming in and said they liked me, I kept waiting for them to show their true colors. You know what I'm saying? They started to act like the white people that I knew, but it never happened.
I mean, these were white people that were just like we were, no different than we were. They called my dad a mister.
The day after the attack on the bridge, the marchers file a federal lawsuit. They ask the court to rule immediately that they have a constitutional right to march from Selma to Montgomery to protest the denial of their right to vote.
In a real sense, we are moving and we cannot afford to stop because Alabama and because our nation has a date with destiny.
But federal judge Frank Johnson issues an order prohibiting the march, pending a court hearing in 3 days. Nevertheless, Dr. King leads marchers back to the bridge.
We marched to the bridge to about the same spot, and the state troopers were there again.
You are ordered to stop. Stand where you are. This march will not continue.
Dr. King calls for a prayer, then turns the march around back into Selma.
This doesn't mean that I disrespect the federal courts, nor does it mean that I disrespect Judge Johnson, but I felt that we had to do it.
That evening, Clark Olson joins fellow ministers Orloff Miller and James Reeb for dinner at Walker's Cafe, a well-known black diner. As they leave, 3 white men approach.
They came at us. One of them yelled, "Hey, you niggers." Of course, all 3 of us were white. One of the men swung a club and hit Jim on the left side of his head as he was walking. Jim immediately fell to the ground. Jim was lying there in great pain, and I held his hand, and he squeezed my hand tighter and tighter until he went unconscious.
Reeb is transported to a Birmingham hospital, where he dies. With tensions high, Selma Public Safety Director Wilson Baker tries to barricade protesters in the neighborhood near Brown Chapel.
And he made a decision that if y'all march downtown, y'all gonna die. And that's when they set up what we call the Berlin Wall.
Hey, build that wall, build that wall, build that wall. Hey, build that wall in Selma, Alabama.
He put up these wooden horses across Sylvan Street, right near Brown Chapel, and left policemen there day and night to basically keep us contained behind the horses.
I loved the Berlin Wall because we had the police essentially where we wanted them. And we had fun just outmaneuvering them.
In Montgomery, Judge Johnson begins hearing testimony in the federal lawsuit. When the judge sees the film of the attack on the bridge, he is visibly moved. President Johnson is also moved to act.
At times, history and fate meet at a single time, in a single place, to shape a turning point in man's unending search for freedom. So it was at Lexington and Concord. So it was a century ago at Appomattox. So it was last week in Selma, Alabama. What happened in Selma is part of a far larger movement which reaches into every section and state of America. It is the effort of American Negroes to secure for themselves the full blessings of American life. Their cause must be our cause too. Because it's not just Negroes, but really it's all of us who must overcome the crippling legacy of bigotry and injustice. And we shall overcome.
Johnson announces that he's sending a voting rights bill to Congress.
I cried like a baby when I heard him say, "We shall overcome."
And what he had done, he basically took the words of our movement and put them into a speech from the White House. We knew that something powerful was coming and was about to happen.
2 days after the president's speech, Judge Frank Johnson issues his ruling.
Judge Johnson has just ruled that we have a legal and constitutional right to march from Selma to Montgomery.
Brown Chapel, the site of mass protest, is the official launching point for the March to Montgomery. Many of the students who helped start the voting rights campaign are there.
We were kids who had grown up in the cotton fields and had just gone out and started demonstrating. We didn't know that we would attract so much attention.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around.
As the marchers pass over the Edmund Pettus Bridge, they again encounter troops. This time, they're there to protect the protesters.
We realized for the first time we were being protected by the government. Actually being protected by the state instead of being beat up by the state.
Nobody turn me around. I just keep on walking. Oh, I keep on marching on a freedom land.
Every step that you take, it's like having a sugar rush, you know? You just go, and you're just in the moment. We are here. We are making a statement.
Marchers are drenched by a torrential downpour. They sleep in the mud, but they do not stop.
I was determined to go to Montgomery and let George Wallace see what he had done to me, to let him know that he had created his worst nightmare. I was going to get an education. I was going to be there in their faces at all times. I was going to fight for what was right at all times. That's what I wanted him to know.
On March 25th, 25,000 activists stream into downtown Montgomery.
It was completely exhilarating to see the throngs of humanity. Black, white, you know, everybody. All types of religion combined to support us in that movement.
We were 14, 15, 16 years old. We didn't have a clue we were making history. We were just trying to correct wrongs, trying to make some wrongs right.
Today I want to tell the city of Selma. Tell them, Doctor. Today I want to say to the state of Alabama. Yes, sir. Today I want to say to the people of America and the nations of the world that we are not about to turn around. Yes, sir. We are on the move now. Yes, sir. The beating and killing of our clergymen and young people will not divert us. Yes, sir. We're on the move now. Yes, sir.
There were many who experienced beatings, and some had died, you understand? But getting to Montgomery was a feeling of great triumph, victory, and thanks.
We did this, and all I could think about was finally they weren't going to call my daddy a boy anymore.
People were joyous, and they knew that change was coming.
Four and a half months after the marchers reached Montgomery, President Johnson signs the Voting Rights Act of 1965, outlawing discriminatory voting practices.
It meant that we were right. We had a right to go into the lunch counters. We had a right to vote. We had a right to be free like all the white people in Selma.
By the end of the year, 250,000 new black voters will register in the South.
We did it. We helped get the right to vote.
Still, there's so much more to be done.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed the film. I'm gonna get Claudia back here and encourage all of you, if you have questions for Claudia about the film or about contemporary concerns, I think that she would be happy to answer some of them. And I would also just say that, you know, the film tells us much about the past, but we want to help bring the conversation up to the present as well. And so I hope that we can do that. Okay, let's see if we can get Claudia back on here. There we go. Hello, Claudia. Oh, I don't hear you there.
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Yeah,
okay.
Good.
Yes, at the
So I know people are we've got already one question out there, and I have a few as well. But and as I said, I hope we can move the discussion to the present, because we don't want to just be talking about the 1960s. We want to be talking about 2020. And I thought maybe as a way to get us there, could you just talk to us a little about what you're doing these days? And I know that you're involved in getting out the vote and things and concerns about voting rights today, right? So tell us a little about what you do now.
Yes, yes, indeed. The movie that we just watched, it really recaptures the memories, the emotions, and determinations of what was happening then. And somehow it might, in a sense, the 60s seem almost to a legend, a myth to some. And that is what I'm glad that we did at least review this as we are moving forward. And now, in this particular time, if we go to one of the things that is really, I would say, set ablaze the world and look into what's happening as far as civil rights is concerned, George Floyd. It brought newness to what we had experienced in those previous days. And although the immensity of this particular time with George Floyd has changed, the problems remain the same. So as far as the NAACP is concerned, we are still on the path of registering people, monitoring. In fact, the Legal Defense Fund has filed a suit because of the intimidation and the fact of what's happening with the U.S. Postal Service. Judge Sullivan issued a stop order for the U.S. Postal to make sure that they eliminate to stop the hindrances that they had enforced for the mail delivery of the ballot, particularly in Detroit and Philadelphia. When the NAACP, the Legal Defense Fund, just monitored this, they found that the delivery of all mail, which means including the ballots, it was like 52% in Philadelphia, 56% somewhere in Detroit. So we know that the impact is really, really happening as it was that particular time. So much of the voter suppression acts of the NAACP is working towards making sure that on the day of election that we have monitors. As we gave the information to what we to the telephone numbers where people can outreach to know what's going on, not only in their local area, but also in the statewide area and how to vote. To protect the vote, the voting is the cornerstone of democracy. And that's one of the things that we definitely emphasize always at all times as far as voting rights is concerned with the NAACP. So with that in mind, it's making sure that all of our members, we almost attempt to weaponize our members. So our members can reach out to the community to make sure that they know actually, and to also disseminate disinformation, which we're being swamped with disinformation. In fact, there was another incident that has been taken into the court when they were sending out robocalls, which was telling once again, we're talking about Black communities, Detroit, Philadelphia, they always seem to target those, and that these calls was intimidating people to say, if you vote, that your voting information could be given out and that you were subjected to being arrested, that you would be subjected to being given vaccines if you were that this were given out. So we're on this, we are really following the trail of making sure our people get the right information.
Yeah, I put into the chat a whole bunch of links and phone numbers that may be helpful, including the NAACP's Legal Education and Defense Fund. Just to give people some information they need. I see some questions coming in and I want to pose them to you, Claudia. One is what lessons should we learn from the Selma voting rights struggle that apply to people today and the current efforts to stop voter suppression or to motivate our communities to get out and vote? What are some of the lessons we should take?
Some of the lessons that we should take from that is the fact that we must accept our roles as citizens, okay? We need to accept the fact that we are responsible for the country. We cannot sit back and it seems somewhat of can be a mentality that we think that someone else should do it or it's someone else's fault. We need to accept the fact that it's our fault, our country, and what you want done, you got to make sure that the people that you elect, they get it done for you. And if you don't participate, where is your action coming from? I mean, what are you to say? What are you to do? Okay, we are all equal. Okay, and if you feel that you are equal, okay, then do your share as equal. Don't tell me that Claudia should do this or whomever. You should do what you have to do. It's motivation, activation, mobilizing, organizing. The conversation that you'll have, think about how you're going to actualize the conversation that you have, actualize, putting some action behind. What can I do? Okay. Join the NAACP. How many people we have? How many memberships that we have? Whoever's speaking to me, join the NAACP. We're the oldest, boldest, baddest since 1909. So you should be out there with us. Get involved. That's what we need to do.
I know I said this to you before, Claudia. I love your passion. I love it. And I know that energizes the people you speak with. I'm sure it does.
Because I
know you're out there working with students and trying to encourage civic engagement today, right? One of the things that struck me in this film is about the youth, right? It's young people who are out there.
I was 16 years old.
And so when you work with young people today, do they know that history? And do they see that they have a power as well? And it's not just adults who are shaping the world?
Well, that's something, it is certainly not taught it's really not taught. You're absolutely correct on that. And being an NAACP president, I always had to have a youth unit. At the time, everybody would tell you, I must have youth because I want to impress youth. You know how youth want to impress each other? Well, I want to impress them, to know where I came from and to know what they can do and what their roles are, and what their responsibilities are. I think one of the things that reason our youth are not quite as involved, because we as adults, you know, some of us my age, we're NAACP members and we're active and we do things that we have to do, but we do it mostly within ourselves, you know, and the youth is something like, you know, on the sideline, you know. So with that in mind, I would like to say, I would like to tell young people, you know, and up to myself, you know, that we need to, you know, let you know exactly. Because in my day, we go back into this particular time, you see, as far as my involvement at my age, all right, my teachers were telling me what to do. I really didn't understand, as they put it out in the movie. We were young. We didn't know the impact that history was going to have on us. But why were we there? Because our teachers, our grandmothers, our aunts said, no, you got to do what you got to do. So they were impressing upon us what was needed. And from their experience, you know, they wanted a better life for us. So I think that's.
Yeah. Somebody's asking a question about particularly John Lewis and the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And I know that, and the person's asking about whether the bridge should be changed, the name of the bridge should be changed to the John Lewis Bridge. And I know this is something that came up shortly after John Lewis passed away in this past summer. Do you know more about any that debate or the issues involved?
Well, it's still on hold because of the fact John Pettus Bridge was named for a Confederate general. He was also a member of the KKK. And because of its significance, you know, there is this effort, and I think it's going to eventually pass, that it should be renamed the John, you know, Lewis Bridge, because of the fact that everything it's such an, you know, oxymoron as far as the whole thing is so different. You know, exactly. So that's in progress. And what we can do, whoever's asking the questions, we can always write it into whoever our representatives are. Because remember, the government, you know, people that we elect, they work for us. And it seems like we have the point in our mindset that, okay, that when you come in contact with a government employee that we have elected, we act as though those people are that they're superior to us. But remember, we elect them. And this is one of the points that I'm finding in the government now, particularly in this administration. They think that we are the subservience. But I think, you know, the whole thing needs to be reversed. We need to put, you know, actualize and activate what we need to get these people to do, okay? Use our power, and our collective power is our voting power.
And that's the reason why we showed this film tonight, right? And with the election coming up, encouraging people, whatever their political viewpoint, to encourage them to get out and use their voting power. There's another question here about charismatic leadership. Yes. You know, we see in the film, and we know from the civil rights movement, that we have two huge figures there that we see in the film with John Lewis and also Martin Luther King Jr. But today, do you think we have, or do we need a charismatic leader like that to lead the protests and to rally people to the cause today?
Well, going back into that particular era, due to the fact that we really did at that particular time need people, I would say charismatic leaders, or people with substantive ideas, ideology, because of the fact that in our minds of coming from the Black perspective, remember, we came forced migration, okay? Our culture is lost. So we really didn't have anything to build up. It's like we're in this country, in the wilderness, lost, okay? So it's not something that you have something to a precedent that we have to believe in anything. So we have to create our own. So it's generally someone who evolves from that type of creativeness that we need as a leader, and to have that. And I think so thus far, it doesn't seem that we have gotten away from that, because I think one of the things that is always evident that the Black church has always been so influential in the Black community is because the ministers have great influence. And once again, it goes back to the psychological effect that it has on us as people, because we were just still, I think in our culture, in our mind, in a sense, that's something that we just need a leader. And some people do, you know, I mean, it's something, I don't know, it's a human thing And it can be, I think that certainly that is not something that we have now. And, I think that it's something that we could have some stronger voices, because I don't believe in cult figures. I believe in, I don't believe in cult figures, but I think that we should have some strong voices, influential, strong voices, and strong platform. So if people got together as a collective body and put the platforms out there, that would, to me, doesn't necessarily mean that we just have a single individual. We could be as a force, a unified force.
Maybe one of the challenges today is that it's harder for an individual to gain that power as a charismatic leader, given all the other voices that we hear through Twitter, through Instagram, through all these news sources. It's kind of much harder for one person's voice to dominate, perhaps. I see another question that's coming up, which is getting right at the heart of one of the big issues facing our country today, and that's about the treatment by the police of African Americans. And in particular, I wonder what the NAACP or what should be done, in your opinion, to help train police officers to be aware of the challenges they face when working with the African American community and to combat bias.
Of course, just to be clear, the NAACP supports law and order. Okay, what is the question happens is, why don't law and order respect us? And I think that, when people go through, it's the term defunding the police. Jimmy, that's a generic term. But what are you saying, defund the police? We're not talking, it's not the fact of defunding the police. We want the police to recognize us as human beings. We want the same type of protection that everyone else does, everyone receives in their community. So I think that one of the things that, it is a cultural thing to a degree. Once again, too bad people still think that skin, which we all have covering our bodies, and I would just like to say skin, it just happens to be the largest organ of the body, okay? That's all it is, a functioning organ that serves to cover the rest of our, bodily organs. So when you get too much into the skin color, and I think that really happens at times, that people only see the color. They feel threatened and they feel other ways. So some of the things that cultural awareness certainly should be more emphasized as far as police are concerned. De-escalation. Why can't you tase somebody or shoot them in the leg as opposed to instantly killing them or whatever? Aren't they taught any tactics to actually physically take down a person other than shoot a person? I mean, you see a man, we have incidents where you would have a man 6'9". No, that's exaggeration. 245. He's gonna slap a little girl. So okay, I'm intimidated. I mean, if you're that intimidated, how are you an officer? How do you get through your training? And once again, the training program should be, to me, to be put together as far as the communities that they are serving, some type of awareness, some type of connectivity to the people that you are actually going to be confronting every day, if that's your particular area that you're working in. Okay, get a connective force. I mean, come together and say, okay, this is people. I have to do my job. Sure, you have to do your job, but please respect me, respect my humanity. And I think that's something that really, really has to be taught, and it has to be emphasized, just around.
I know that we're running out of time and there are more questions, but I want to just give you the opportunity. Are there things that you want to tell us that haven't come out in these questions or I haven't mentioned, but do you want to share any last thoughts before we wrap up our program?
Well, with some of the things I would like to say, always, that this is a narrative. So many things that we did as far as the questions are concerned are narratives. We shape the narrative. We must shape the narratives, because who has the history and they invent the images. These are the things that come through, and this is what functions as the right thing to do. And I think, we as a country, the United States must become the country it was meant to be, a unified country. We are multifaceted. We are diverse, and it's so many issues now, in particular, as we go forth in this upcoming election. We must think about the country. The country is on the line. Vote like you have never voted before in your life, because this is so meaningful. The Constitution, that is our bedrock. And if we do not honor the Constitution, how do we have a country? This is a country. We must have laws, and those laws must be applicable and not to be just undermined and undertaken for now. Exactly, voter intimidation, voter purging, all things are happening to stop people from participating as a citizen. Their right, 15th Amendment, you have the right to vote. But we had to fight 100 years for that. And we still are fighting that same fight. Why? But once again, being a part of the person in the pre-Selma days, in my school interaction, we were the Wilcox freedom fighter. You can look that up, Wilcox freedom fighter. So I still remain a Wilcox freedom fighter, but I'm in New York, Nassau County. So anyway, we must still keep the fight within us. But, you know, and know that our country, the country that we have fought for, the people that my people migrated by force here, the people who came here by whatever means, as Dr. King said, I don't care how you got here, we all in the same boat now, okay? It's the country first, you know? This is not, I don't believe in that dictatorship. We are the people. What's the word? W-E, we. We are the people. And we got to take that role as being we the people. We are the rulers. So vote, vote, vote. And those, if you have not voted already, don't use the mail. Drop it off at a ballot box or take it in. Do not use the mail at this particular time because the mail is just so sketchy now. You know, maybe here in New York, we may not be, but there's Eric Holder. This is Eric Holder's suggestion now. Try to get it in yourself as, you know, whatever, just avoid the post office, you know, just to get that. So thank you so very much.
All right.
It's a pleasure meeting you. You know, thank you so much for this opportunity, and we'll stay connected.
Thanks very much, Claudia. Murray, do you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to say two quickies, so to speak. Yes. I did want to put in a plug for HMTC for our program on training police cadets in terms of sensitivities and how to deal with the populations that exist on Long Island. I'm very proud of that program. And I do want to stress the importance of voting, equity, and teaching tolerance to create the kind of world we are proud to live in. I want to thank everyone for attending our program, I want to thank the NAACP for co-sponsoring this. We hope that you found this program interesting and relevant. We invite you to attend the next David Taub Real Upstanders program in the Teaching Tolerance series. Stay tuned for the name of the movie, the date, and the time. In the meanwhile, everyone stay safe, stay well, and vote.
Yes, and thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful evening, and I look forward to seeing you at other programs soon.
President 20.